right, a big hand for our honored guest as he comes in. Will you please take your seats? Ladies and gentlemen, we are very fortunate tonight to have a wonderful singing group entertain for us. Starring in radio, television, and especially the Jack Benny Show, Bill Days and his troupe over the years have always cooperated with UCLA 100%. I am pleased to be able to present to you the Sportsman Quartet. Let's bring them on with a nice hand.
Sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening, sugar at supper time. Be my little sugar and love me all the time. Sugar in the morning, honey in the evening, honey at supper time. Be my little honey and love me all the time. Put your arms around me and swear by the stars above, you'll be ours forever in a heaven of love. Sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening, sugar at supper time. Be my little sugar and love me all the time. Now sugar time is any time that you're near. What's he doing? Or just a fear. So don't you roam.
So don't you roam.
Just be my honeycomb. Honeycomb, we'll live in a heaven of love. So, sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening, or any other time. Be my little sugar and love me all the time.
Sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening, sugar at supper time.
Be my little sugar, it's sugar time.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Ackerman, for asking us once again, especially for this wonderful occasion, for Mr. Drake. In the back page, it says, cows may come, cows may go, the bull goes on and on and on. Well, that's like us, because we keep coming back like that old bull, and it keeps showing up. It's kind of fun for us, I'll tell you. Yeah. There'll be a little more bull later on. You know, it's a known fact there are many people afraid of the dark. And it's also a known fact there are even some of us afraid of our own shadows. Well, there was a wonderful tune written about a particular shadow, and we'd like to do it for you now. It's called Me, and My Shadow. Me and my shadow, strolling down the avenue. Me and my shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. And when it's 12 o'clock, we climb the stair. We never knock, for nobody's there. Just me and my shadow,
just you and me.
And my shadow.
It's always sunny weather when we're together.
Strolling down the avenue.
I'll go where you go, right behind you.
Me
And me.
and my shadow.
Oh, so lonely.
Not a soul to tell our troubles to.
We got double trouble.
And when it's 12 o'clock, we climb the stairs.
Just me and you.
We never know.
Open the door.
Oh, nobody's there. Just me. And my shadow. All alone and feeling blue. All alone and feeling
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start the next number, I'd just like to tell Walt and Jim that I got my strawberry shortcake right back of here. It was great, just before we went on. The next number we're going to do was used a few years back as a basis for a Lucky Strike commercial. And despite the fact that we're no longer affiliated with Lucky's, it just so happens that he insists that we retain this number from a bygone era. He likes to use it as a vehicle to demonstrate his whistling ability, ladies and gentlemen.
Actually, it's
Whistling the Flight of the Bumblebee in French. Humble Bob.
Humble Bob.
Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful response. It's true what he said, though. I do have what is termed a perfect pucker. And I'm going to whistle the Flight of the Bumblebee with it here this evening. However, I need the aid of my accompanist, whom I have with me right here, a trained bee.
What?
A trained bee, and he is the son of the bee for whom this tune was written.
That's a UCLA.
Pull it back to the table.
That's a UCLA bee. UCLA bee.
No more LSMFT, now we're smoking Lipton tea. Be happy, just take tea and see. The old songs, the old songs, those good old songs for me. We love to hear those minor chords and good close harmony.
Oh, those are the good old days. The days of the horse's buggy and the bicycle built for two, and the familiar red and white striped barbershop pole where the gang all hung out. Yeah, those are the good old days, and I guess we'll never forget that old-fashioned quartet that Daddy loved so well. Why, you just had to hand Dad a drink of old Granddad, and he'd hit high C like a bell. That lovable foursome, they never were boresome, and Dad sang the lead all the time. With a bowler on top and mustaches that dropped. Oh, 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 oh.
Don't get it.
That is a seal of approval.
Oh, they keep coming.
They blend rhythm
Love his show
and
business.
romance and rhyme. You made me what I am today. I hope you're satisfied. Satisfied. You dragged and dragged me down until my soul within me.
Pardon me.
Died.
You shattered each and every dream. You fooled me from the start. Yeah.
And though you're not true, may God bless you.
That just happened. Honest to God, it just happened accident.
Oh, that's the curse of an aching heart. I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old Dad. She was a pearl and the only girl that Daddy ever had. A good old-fashioned girl with heart so true, one who loved nobody else but you. I want a girl just like the girl that married dear old Dad. By the light of the silvery moon,
Hold it.
I want a spoon
I want to.
to my honey I've crooned love's tune.
Hold it.
Honeymoon, keep it shining in June. Beams will bring love's dreams. We'll be cuddling soon beneath the silvery moon.
A glass of water.
We couldn't do this number till we got our playtex.
Hold it! Whoa! It's alive!
Honeymoon,
Silvery moon.
keep a shining in June. Silvery beams will be cuddling soon. Oh boy. Whatever happened to John L. Lewis? Well, he got the shaft.
No.
Oh, he fell down the shaft.
Well, that's better.
Beneath the silver
silvery moon.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You're a wonderful audience. Even though you've seen this jazz 500 times, but it's great for us to work for you again. It's 9:15 for those who are taking pills. I have to go.
Hey, wait a minute.
Not now.
Well, I have a blind date.
Oh, you have a blind date.
Yes,
Well, who's the girl? I'll tell you.
Oh, yeah?
Do you know Kitty from Bruin City?
Do we know Kitty? She sure is pretty.
Well, I've got a date tonight. I hope she treats me right.
You're in for quite an evening, boy. We had a date last night.
What happened?
We kissed her in the evening and we kissed her at night.
All three of you?
We kissed her, yes, we kissed her while the stars were shining bright.
Pretty messy,
We
wasn't
kissed
it?
her in the springtime and we kissed her in the fall.
Fall?
But last night on the back porch we kissed her best of all.
Sounds good.
We kissed her in a Lincoln and an Oldsmobile.
In a new 88?
We kissed her in a Buick while she hung onto the wheel.
Good deal.
We kissed her in a hot rod and we ran into a wall.
That's all.
But last night in a Jaguar we kissed her best of all.
Well, cozy, yeah? Yeah? Well, tell me more. Go ahead now.
We kissed her in the parlor and we kissed her on the portico, the cupola, the patio.
No, the cupola?
Yes, yes, yes. We kissed her on the
Where's
love
that?
seat and we kissed her on the sofa in the presence of a chauffeur.
Go on, well.
Well,
Oh, I
we
love
kissed
it.
her night and day and then we kissed her in the traffic spoon, the silence of her lonely room.
Yeah, and then...
Then we kissed her best of all.
I got the idea. See you guys later.
Yes, kissed her in a rowboat, and then we kissed her on a showboat, and then we kissed her on a towboat.
Did you kiss her on a scow?
On the Ile de France we found her with all the gulls around her, and as the boat began to flounder,
Did you kiss her on the prow?
kissed her in the Tower of Pisa, and after she had changed her visa, we kissed her on the Champs-Elysees from Hindustan to
Timbuktu.
Well, I can't wait till I get her back on the back porch where you met her.
This is what we're gonna do. We'll get our hats and go with you.
Well, let's go.
We'll kiss her in the evening, then we'll kiss at night. We'll kiss, and then hold her tight. Then we'll kiss in the springtime, in the summer she'll fall. Not tomorrow, mister. But if we make it to the back porch, sister, we'll kiss her best of all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to take just enough time right now to introduce you to someone very important to our act. We'd like to have you meet him and join us in giving him a hand for the fine job that he always does. He's none other than our own talented and wonderful accompanist, arranger, and conductor. Ladies and gentlemen, even if he is from the University of Washington Music Department, John Arthur Rarig.
Tell everybody to sit down.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'd like now to sort of invite you on this next number to maybe perhaps join in along with us. It's a good old-fashioned spiritual, and about the second or third chorus, if you feel the urge to join in and the lyrics and the music are all of a sudden becoming familiar, probably most of you are familiar with this song anyway, entitled Do Lord.
Do Lord, oh do remember me, oh Lordy, do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me, way beyond the blue. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me, oh Lordy, do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me.
Oh, Lordy,
Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me, way
blue.
Jay.
I got a home in heaven that outshines the sun. I got a home in heaven that outshines the sun. I got a home in heaven that outshines the sun.
Way beyond the blue. And do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me, oh Lordy, do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me.
Oh Lordy,
Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Way beyond the blue. Wow.
Now I'm going up to glory, open the gates. Now I'm going up to glory, open the gates. Now I'm going up to glory, open the gates. Way beyond the blue.
Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me, oh Lordy, do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Way beyond the blue. Gurney.
Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal.
Way beyond the blue. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me, oh Lordy, do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Way beyond the blue. Bill.
We are all God's children, that's why we love Him too. We are all God's children, that's why we love Him too. We are all God's children, that's why we love Him too. Way beyond the blue.
Let's all
Everybody
clap.
now.
Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember. Let's hear it. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Hallelujah.
Sing it.
Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Way beyond the blue. All right, let's take it home now.
Yeah.
Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me, oh Lord, do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember. Louder. Do Lord, oh do Lord, oh do remember me. Up in heaven, way beyond the blue. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. They're reading great. Thank you, Sportsman Quartet. Aren't they great? Terrific. May I take this opportunity to recognize those who have certainly contributed to this great dinner tonight. May I mention Mrs. Roe Baldwin and her ticket department girls for decorations. Aren't they cute? Mr. Harry Morris for the program, Mr. Clint Elliott and Mr. George Harris for the dinner, Mr. Ivan Scott for music. You just heard the sportsmen entertain you, Paul Helms Jr. for favors. ASU CLA staff have certainly helped us. And last but certainly not least, the instigator of this dinner tonight, I want him to stand up and take a big hand, Mr. Robert Fisher. And put the spot on again. He has a very beautiful wife, Mrs. Fisher. Mr. and Mrs. Drake, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I welcome you to the testimonial dinner for one of UCLA's favorite sons, a teacher of athletic skills, a developer of men, a maker of champions. And I think I can say without reservation, to the men at least that are here tonight, that our honored guest has either taped, rubbed, counseled, or coached every man in this room. That right? As a matter of fact, my stage manager, Harry Shimada, today, on the way here, fell over a chain, ruined his ankle. Who fixed him up? Uncle Drake.
That's because I have never taped him before.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into our first speaker. Our leadoff man is a very close friend of Ducky. He's at present the principal of Wilson High School. As a matter of fact, he was an usher at Ducky's and Ethelyn's wedding. In fact, I think he accompanied them on their honeymoon. That sounds funny, but I think it's true. Who is better to tell us about the early days of Ducky's career than Attilio Parisi? Tilly, take it away. You're in the spotlight, boy.
Thank you, Bill, master of all masters of ceremonies, Elvin and his very charming wife, Ethelyn, Mr. Drake, and the rest of that charming Drake and Curtis family combination, all of whom are seated at the head table. Mr. Drake, you didn't realize what you started a few years ago. Friends, now I realize what Joey Brown meant when he was introduced one day by the master of ceremonies and told that he had 15 minutes in which to speak. 15 minutes, screamed Joey Brown. He says, why, it takes me 15 minutes to bow. While I have an awful lot I could say about Elvin, and all of it real good, I can't begin to take that much time because we are restricted. And because there are many excellent, far better speakers than I to follow, I shall hold to the restriction of time. I do remember that when I came to UCLA after I had been out a year to try to get enough money to stay in school, in those days UCLA was SBUC, the southern branch of the University of California, sometimes misnamed by the Stanfordites when they saw their California friends. They didn't know what the SB stood for. When I returned to UCLA, I found Elvin on the campus. He had already established himself as a cross-country and track man. He'd won his numerals already. I was attracted to Elvin because, as a fraternity man, we happened to be in the same fraternity. I was amazed to hear his vocabulary. Those of you who know how fraternity men speak were really shocked when Elvin would get real angry. In fact, he'd get downright mad, and one day he exploded. And this is what he said. Do you know that gosh darned son of a buck? Well, I can assure you this was real shocking to all of us. Afterwards, Elvin and I left college, and we spent many happy hours together. Bill got the story a little bit twisted. I did take about 10 or 15 years away from Petey's life because when I was supposed to usher at their wedding, I was always late wherever I went, and she had her fingernails bitten clear up to her elbows by the time I arrived that night. She thought the wedding was going to be delayed, but for once I was at least 30 seconds early, much to her relief. After we left college, we still spent considerable time playing together on a softball team where Elvin became the outstanding pitcher of all the softball teams in the Los Angeles City Schools Faculty League. And then Elvin taught me how to play basketball. And finally, when my wife and I were married, Bill, it's the other way around, my wife and I waited about 3 or 4 days while living in the Drake home while they closed up the Big Bear Boys Camp. And then all 4 of us went on my honeymoon, Bill, not theirs. That just goes to show how trustworthy Elvin is. And I want to tell you, he had hair in those days. and he was a very handsome fellow. Now his character shows through, and he's just as handsome as he ever was. I wish I could tell you some of the other anecdotes. I have with me here a paper that Petey just gave me, and she asked me if I would read it, but it's a little bit too long, and I can't do it inside of the 5 minutes. But this was a testimonial that some of the boys at Big Bear Camp wrote for him, and it closes with the fact that one of their fondest memories as Big Bear Boys Camp closed was the memory of that inspiring man who led them. He was the kindly, sympathetic, understanding, lover of fair play, stern disciplinarian, counselor, and friend, Mr. Drake. Elvin, congratulations.
Thank you, Tilly. In introducing the unholy twins, I have a sort of a testimonial from another track coach that I'm going to read to you. And I quote, "Ducky Drake is a true nobleman and a great coach. If a coach of the year were chosen for inspiration given to the boys, Ducky would have won such an award many times. He has performed close to miracles. I shall always remember his handling of his 2 decathlon champions as one of the finest achievements of all time. Both Rayford and C.K. were great athletes when they arrived at UCLA, but each was injury-prone, and each had 1 or 2 difficult decathlon events. Duck brought them along just right and had each one of them up for the really big one. He is a grand person, a grand coach, who helped immensely to raise the flag of glory for our profession. Signed, Brutus Hamilton." As you know, Brutus is the track coach at the University of California up north. Here representing all the athletes are the 2 stalwart champions, probably the best all-around athletes in the world today. Let's bring on C.K. Yang and Rayford Johnson. Come on, boys. Get in close. Boy, what an array. You know, both of you competed in the Rome Olympics in the decathlon, and you came up to the 1,500 meter, and whoever won that race was going to get the gold medal. CK, what instructions did Ducky give you? After all, you were representing China, and they paid his way over there and so forth. What instructions did Ducky give you?
Well, before the Olympic Games, he always told us to practice 1,500 meters because we are so close. And so, before the last day, that night, he told me that on the 1,500 meters, because you run faster than Rayford, and you run as hard as you can, and so maybe you can get more points than he does.
Rayford, what did he tell you?
We told him to follow CK until the last 5 or 10 yards and then pass him.
It's fantastic. Well, Rayford, who do you think Ducky really wanted to win? Now tell me who you really think, or who do you think Ducky wanted to win? After all, it's 2 of his boys running.
Well, that's a pretty difficult question because Ducky, as you said, Free China had paid his way to the Olympic Games and he won as CK's coach. But I sort of felt that I thanked CK, and thank the people of Formosa, the government officials and the AAU officials for sending Ducky, because I just felt that they were paying my coach's way to the Olympic Games.
Pretty good. Pretty good. Pretty good. Who was the first, Rayford, to congratulate you after you beat CK in the 1500?
Well, I would say that the first individual to me was Coach Drake, and I'm sure that the first fellow to my close friend was probably Coach Drake as well. I might add one other thing to this 1500 meter story. Coach Drake had worked closely with us on the 1500 meters because we were fairly close point-wise, and he thought that this race or decathlon would be decided in the 10th event. Well, both CK and I had hoped that this wouldn't happen because neither of us are too good in the 1500 meters. But we worked very closely with Coach Drake and Larry Carter, and this race, decathlon, went to the 10th event. And just prior to the race, I talked with CK and asked him what type of race he would run, and he didn't have too much to say. And he asked me, and I told him I didn't have much to say to him either at that time. But the race started. The first lap was all right. I usually get tired at about 250 yards. But I managed to stay behind CK, and he decided he would sprint on the second lap. Well, I thought this fellow was kind of nuts, you know, sprinting on the second lap. And I remember what Coach Drake and Larry Carter had said about distance running. If your man starts to run a little fast and tries to open up some distance between his nearest rival, then this gives him some incentive. So I figured I had to go with him, but this was the second lap. But I went with him, and during the sprint, we went past the Russian. And I said, well, this is going to be a pretty fast race because the Russian usually beats us both by 150 yards or so. So this was the end of his race. On the third lap, CK decided, well, he looked to see if I was still there, and I was pretty tired at that time. I was running on the inside of the track as close to the inside as possible, the shortest distance. And he looked, and I wasn't there because I was so close to the inside. Well, they also told us, Coach Drake and Larry, that if a man looks and doesn't see his rival there, then this gives him some incentive as well. So I decided the next time he looked, I would be there, and I moved on the outside of the track, and when he looked again, I was there. So the race went on. It was a very close race, but after the race, Coach Drake was there to congratulate both of us for our performance.
That's wonderful. This is going to be a bedtime story for many years.
Yes, to my...
Now, Rayford, what advice can you give CK? Ducky is going as CK's coach to Tokyo, and after all, you have the gold medal, and we all want CK to get the gold medal there. What advice can you give CK?
Well, the only advice that I can give CK is just to tell him to compete the way he competed in 1960. I don't think that he'll have much trouble winning. You never know what happens during the Olympic year, but I think that CK is the type of competitor that takes one event at a time. He does as well as he can in each event, and I think that this will put him on top in Tokyo. But there's one thing I would like to say. I haven't talked to CK about this yet. I would like very much to play CK Young in the CK Young story when he returns.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Isn't that wonderful? Just one more thing, CK, I was down in the training quarters the other day, and CK said, you know, when I go to Tokyo, I'm going to do the thinking. Ducky is going to compete this time. Now, Rayford, what about Ducky Drake, the coach and the man? And as soon as Rayford gets through, CK, you're on.
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure for me to be here this evening, to have the opportunity to speak in behalf of the athletes in the past, those in the present, and the future athletes that will be attending UCLA. I've had the opportunity to talk to many of the athletes who've worked with Coach Drake and through the years, and to speak in behalf of them is really a pleasure because they've been the type of people that we've all looked to for guidance, because we know that they've been Ducky's boys. In the future, we feel that Ducky is not leaving UCLA. He'll have the opportunity to work with all the boys, not just those in track and field. And I think that as those in the past and the present are at the present time, those in the future will have the opportunity to work with Coach Drake and a great man whose inspiration has caused many of athletes, many boys at this school to perform greater than they ever thought they could. I've often looked for an appropriate spot for this, and I think that tonight might be the night. Back in 1958, when I made the trip to Russia, the first dual meet between the United States and Russia, Coach Drake wasn't going to make this trip, and it would be the first time that I had competed at any place without Coach Drake being there. So I went to him. I spent a lot of time with him in preparation for this particular competition. In fact, Kuznetsov had just set the world record in the decathlon about a month or two before these games started. And I hadn't really thought too much about this first dual track meet, but after he set the record, I talked to Coach, and we decided this might be a good time to meet Kuznetsov in this dual track meet. Well, he wrote a short note knowing that he wouldn't be there and asked me not to open this letter until the night before the competition. I put the letter in my bag, and the night before the competition I opened the letter, and this is what I found. And I think that this letter is the type of things that he would say to a boy in person that he had worked with in preparation for competition, and I think has a lot to say about the man Ducky Drake. He says, "You thought that 7,000 miles or so could separate us, but they can't. These next couple of days I'll be just as much with you as I was in Palmyra," which was the Olympic, the tryouts for this Russian dual meet. "I hope you've enjoyed the preparations and are confident and ready. Remember, you're the champion. You're the one they have to beat, so let them worry. Go about your work with a quiet confidence that cannot be shaken." Now this, I'm sure many of you have heard as he has talked to his athletes, getting them ready for competition. Then he goes down and explains each event. He knew all of my weaknesses in each event. He knew my strong points. He wanted me to forget my weaknesses and concentrate on my attributes in this particular competition. And this too is something that he tells all of his boys, to forget what you've done and concentrate on what you have to do. He goes on and talks about the 10 events in the decathlon, and he ends up by saying, "Well, finally, good luck. No matter what happens, remember, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you can move mountains. Remember, victory is sweet. World records come when least expected. Work and think one event at a time." Well, that's Ducky Drake. And then there was a poem that he also put in this letter, and I think that this is truly Ducky Drake. These are things that he told many boys, all of you probably, at one time or another during your course of your stay here at this University of California, Los Angeles. And it goes, "When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure turns about when we might have won had we stuck it out. So don't give up, though the pace seems slow, for you might succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late when the night slipped down, how close he came to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt, and you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when you're the hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you mustn't quit."
First of all, it's my pleasure to be here on behalf of this testimonial dinner. And I'd like to say a few words on behalf of all Chinese people in the world. Before I came to the States, we never had hope to get the points from the Olympic Games. And then I finally came over to United States, and go to school at UCLA, and then practice with Ducky Drake, and then finally the Chinese people began to think that we would get 1 point from the Olympic Games. And then later on, they became 5, 4, 3, and second place, and then even want me to get first place. So when we went to Rome, the people asked us, Ducky and I, to get the gold medal. You must win. The pressure was heavy on both of us, because Ducky, as you know, that he coached 2 of us, the same school, and Ducky was paid by the Chinese people, and of course he wants both of us to get 1 and 2nd place. And maybe all of you have seen the movies and the decathlon, and I think he didn't care which one of us get 1 first place or 2nd place. And so the 1500 meters, as you heard, the referee said he had to follow me behind me. And I like to tell you about just a little bit about it. I was running on the 3rd laps, and I looked at him behind me, and he was smiling. And I thought he had. I didn't think that even though I run fast, and I can pull him about 10 seconds, so I just end up 10 yards in front of him. And so last Olympic Games, both of us got 1st and 2nd place. I was going to quit after the Olympic Games. Now I decided to go again. And recently, every time we go to practice, and sometimes you hurt in here and hurt in here, and Ducky said, well, if you hurt there, you are going to do the thinking, and I'm going to do the thing. So he's going to run for the 1500 meters in Tokyo. Well, the whole Chinese people appreciate your effort, and also for going the Olympic Games again, and they're looking forward to see you again in Taipei, and also they don't ask us to get the gold medal this time. They ask us to do the best, and I have something to present to you, Ducky, but I cannot give you because the AAU rule said that the amateur athletes cannot accept more than $10. So, on behalf of my wife, and I like to present this a little gift to Mrs. Drake. Of course, Coach Drake is going to retire as a coach at the university in here, but he's going to represent the Republic of China, competing to go to Olympic Games in Tokyo. And I hope he can run 1500 meters. Thank you very much.
Certainly, there are 2 of the finest boys UCLA ever turned out, believe me. And I might say, as just casually, that CK, when he came to UCLA, could speak only 1 word of English, and that word was beefsteak. And that boy, in order to enroll in UCLA, spent about 8 hours a day learning English, and in 4 months he conquered it, and the university admitted him. Now, isn't that great? You try that in Chinese and see what you get. Ducky Drake's life has been actively entwined with masonry. and with the community. Here to speak on behalf of the Masons is a past Grand Master of California. I present to you Judge Ellsworth Meyer. Judge Meyer.
Mr. Ackerman, Mrs. Drake, Elvin. It was back in 1932 that Liberal Arts Lodge number 677, which meets in Westwood, received the petitions, among others, for the degrees of Masonry of 7 men who were already good friends and who had decided that they were going to knock at the door of Masonry together. Incidentally, you heard one of the 7 just a few minutes ago, Attilio Parisi. Among the other 6 were 2 who were affiliated with the athletic department here at UCLA, the late coach Fred Oster, and he whom we are pleased to honor this evening, Elvin Drake. It wasn't possible for the members of the lodge at that time to know, but each of these 3 men was destined to become an officer and eventually master of his lodge. Freemasonry has been fortunate over the centuries in attracting and holding the active interest and support of many men whose names have been credits upon the pages of history to this country and to others. Men of every walk of life and every profession, every vocation. Statesmen such as George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Garibaldi, the liberator of Italy, Simon Bolivar, the liberator of South America. Military men such as Lord Kitchener, General Doolittle, General Douglas MacArthur. Men of music such as Mozart, Haydn, Irving Berlin. Men of letters and literature such as Robert Burns, Kipling, Sir Walter Scott, Mark Twain, and Edward Markham. To these could be added the names of many other men who have found an abiding faith and interest in Freemasonry. And it's therefore not entirely surprising that Elvin Drake should have found such an abiding interest in the principles, the teachings, and the fellowship of Masonry. And for the past 32 years, his Masonic life has been one of the major segments of his entire life. After the usual pinch hitting in the degree work, which new members may do, he was in time appointed an officer of Liberal Arts Lodge, later elected junior warden, senior warden, and then in 1944 elected master of Liberal Arts Lodge. When his term of office was finished, he did not lay down the tools of Masonry, but rather announced and carried out the practice of having every Tuesday night at home open house for any officer of the lodge who cared to drop by and check his memory as to any point in the ritual, which, as you probably know, is unwritten. This was entirely voluntary on his part and a labor of love. In due time, Elvin was appointed an inspector of a Masonic district. Now, you would probably infer from this title that he inspected something, although you might not be sure just what. If I were to merely use adjectives to describe his service and discharge of the duties in this office, you might charge my words off to rhetoric and friendship. So let me tell you some of the things an inspector does in any given year, and then you weigh and determine the great volume of service which he has rendered to the fraternity and what a large part the fraternity has occupied in his life. An inspector has jurisdiction over not 1 but 4 lodges. It is his duty to see that these lodges observe Masonic law and custom and remain a credit to the fraternity. He must visit each of them at least once officially during the year, and of necessity more often informally. He must attend at least 5 schools of instruction in the ritual for the inspectors, and in turn conduct not less than 3 schools of instruction for the 40-odd officers of the 4 lodges. When each lodge selects officers for the ensuing year, he's required to give them an examination written in Masonic law and custom, and an oral examination in the ritual. And his certificate that they have passed both of these examinations is essential before they may be installed into their respective offices. It is only natural that a man who discharges these duties and occupies the office of leadership in this capacity should be one to whom the officers turn on many occasions, and members as well, concerning and asking for advice in things Masonic. Through his Masonic activities, of course, he has had a part in the public school observances, which are sponsored by the Masonic fraternity each April, and the Constitution Month observance, which comes in each September, and likewise through the charitable work of all Masonic orders. Now, in his spare time, if I may use that term somewhat loosely, Elvin has been serving as a director or a member of the board of directors of the Masonic Clubhouse, which the Grand Lodge maintains here for students at UCLA with Masonic backgrounds, and which, as you know, is located on LeConte Avenue between Westwood Boulevard and Bullock's department store. In paying tribute to Elvin this evening, it is entirely fitting, I think, that anyone should stand here and point out his service to our order. I have enumerated the things which an inspector does in 1 year. I trust you have weighed them in the balance and found that it is a great deal of service. But before you pass final judgment, you must multiply by 14, because he has been serving for the past 14 years as the inspector of this district, and doubtless will continue for some years to come. It is fitting and proper that someone should point out to you the service which Elvin has been rendering to an institution which requires of its candidates exemplary character, the declaration of a belief in God and the immortality of the soul, an institution which teaches the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, whose principal tenets are brotherly love, relief, and truth, and which declares the cardinal virtues to be temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. I say it is fitting that someone should stand here and call your attention to this important segment of his life, because it's a cinch Ducky wouldn't do it on his own behalf.
Thank you, Judge Meyer. Now, John Wooden. Our next speaker has depended a great deal on the talents of Ducky. Today, he was honored as the California Father of the Year. And I would surmise that if the basketball team repeats again next year, he's going to be made grandfather of California. It is my extreme pleasure to present to you a very wonderful person who tonight is speaking for all the coaches. He is the #1 basketball coach of the nation, Mr. John Wooden. John Wooden, take it away.
Picking up a new game.
I would have been here earlier, but I just got in from the club, as you can see, so I rushed in. Ducky and Ethelyn, your family and your friends, I don't know exactly why I was chosen to represent the coaches, but I'm quite pleased that I was. I'll never forget, it was just about 16 years ago this time when I came out to UCLA to conduct the first week of spring practice. And I was invited to that week to stay with Ducky and Ethelyn. Now, I was a stranger here at the time, and when I had come out to discuss the possibility of my coming out here, Mr. Johns and Mr. Ackerman were very, very wonderful to me, and I got to go to Lowry's and a few other places like that, and I've been by them since. But I was rather lost, and I was invited to stay with Ducky and Ethelyn, and in spite of the fact that one night, probably the first or second night that I was there, I expected a call from home and did get the call at night, and I wandered away from the bedroom and didn't want to disturb Ducky and Ethelyn, and trying to find the light and not knowing exactly where it was in a strange house. I didn't find the light, but I sure found the chimes. And I awakened them, and we've laughed many times about that since. I think that of all of these affairs that I have had occasion to attend since I've been out here and prior to my coming out here, I don't believe anyone has been more deserving of one than my friend Ducky Drake. There are so many things that I could say about him, but I think that this group out here, the fact that you're here, say far more, Ducky, than I could ever say about you. I know that in your own way, while you have been the track coach for these, I believe that you consider yourself in the manner or the thought that is expressed by Edwin Markham when he says, "There is a destiny which makes us brothers. None goes his way alone. All that we send into the lives of others comes back into our own." I don't think, I know, that you consider yourself very, very rich by the fact that all of these boys that are here and so many hundreds of others that couldn't be here but would, I'm sure, if they could, that they have given you so much more in your mind than you feel that you have ever given them. And yet every boy with whom you've come in contact, and every adult as well, still carries your mark, Ducky, and I'm pleased and happy that I'm one of those that has had that privilege. I think you rather consider, or others I should say, rather consider yourself more in line of another poem or verse from Edwin Markham, where he says, "We are all blind until we see that in the human plan nothing is worth the making that does not make the man. Why build these cities glorious if man unbuilded goes? In vain we build the work unless the builder grows." And I'm sure that these boys and your associates all feel that you have had a great part in building them. I don't know how to really express myself the way that I would like to, Ducky. We've had so much fun through these 16 years. I want you to know, as I said the other day, that you're retiring, yes, as track coach, but you couldn't retire. You couldn't any more retire than well, you just couldn't retire. That's all there is to it. You're going to have to do more work now. There's no question about it. You have had an opportunity to hide behind the fact that you had 2 jobs and other jobs, but now you're the trainer. And I and the other coaches will expect tremendous work from you. We've let you slack off in the past. because you had the development of such as youngsters such as those two that were up here, and we knew that it would take most of your time, so we weren't demanding it all on you. So now I expect you to go to work, as far as basketball is concerned at least. Ducky, in behalf of all the coaches and all of your friends here, just to sort of remember this night for a while, and I'm sure that Dr. Blazina will go along with you. Doc, do please ease up a little the next time you're out with him, and let him give these new clubs a good chance. If he could win a hole or two with them the first time around, it would do wonders for him. And he's so lacking in self-confidence. I believe that it would, well, you should just let him win a little bit. But in behalf of the coaches and all your friends, Ducky, they present to you this wonderful set of clubs. And that's a pretty good golf bag, too.
It's too heavy for me to carry.
Congratulations, Ducky, on this your night, and may I wish you and your family and your friends and the athletes that you'll be in touch with from now on best wishes always and always.
Thank you, John.
Ducky.
Thank you, Johnny Wooden. Naturally, at a dinner of this type, you should have one's boss. May I present to you Ducky's boss, here representing the athletic department and the administration, the athletic director of UCLA, Mr. J.D. Morgan. Mr. Morgan.
Ducky, Ethlyn, Mr. Drake, honored family, and friends all. What a rare privilege this is, to honor a man who's retiring as a coach, but to keep him as probably the single finest asset that UCLA can have. He will administer, we hope even more so, and you all know of his accomplishments in the past as our athletic trainer, I hope forever. To start with, it is my pleasure to read a couple of letters of greeting from people who could not be present tonight. Dear Ducky, on the occasion of the testimonial dinner in your honor, it is my privilege to extend heartiest congratulations to you from the National Collegiate Athletic Association. We salute you as one who through a long and illustrious coaching career has exemplified the purposes and aims of the NCAA and the true Olympic spirit in service to track and field. We too wish to honor you as an Olympic coach and trainer. For 18 years head coach at UCLA, and for your lifetime of devotion to athletics and to the youth of your alma mater and the nation. With very best regards, Walter Byers of the NCAA. Next, dear Ducky, unhappily, the graduation of my oldest daughter from college is in direct conflict with the testimonial dinner in your honor. I am sure you will understand then why Mrs. Murphy and I are not in attendance at your dinner.
I do, however, wish to be present, at least to the extent of the written word, and add my expressions of admiration and affection to those which surround you on this evening. Without reservation, I can say that I know of no one who is more intimately built into the traditions and achievements of UCLA than yourself. Through the years, with complete dedication and utter selflessness, you have devoted your life to the greater glory of UCLA, but much more importantly, to serving and coaching with great success its student athletes. This university is fortunate that you chose to join it and will always be in your debt. Very sincerely, Franklin D. Murphy, Chancellor. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's very difficult for me to add to the glowing tributes of Ducky Drake, the man, Ducky Drake, who has served his community so very well, Ducky Drake, the coach, and Ducky Drake, the trainer. However, I think the single most important thing that stands out in my mind is that I've been fortunate for 27 years as man and boy to know Ducky and know him well. And during those years, not once have I ever heard an unkind or an uncomplimentary word about Ducky Drake. But every time that anyone spoke of him, it was in the highest and most complimentary terms. As I've said before, this is his swan song as a coach, but all of our sports are so very fortunate to keep him as a trainer. And Ducky, if you think John Wooden's going to monopolize you for that basketball, you're wrong. Now comes to a very pleasant part of the program. Ducky, your friends wanted to do something in a material way to show you that they love you. Their first act was to be present tonight. Secondly, they wondered if you and Ethlyn wouldn't like to take a vacation. And they were in a quandary. Did you want to go to the Caribbean? Did you want to go to the Hawaiian Islands? Did you want to go to Tokyo? Well, no, it appeared you were going to Tokyo anyway. So they decided to let you and Ethlyn arrive at that decision. And regardless of whether you run the 1,500 meter for CK or not, and in spite of the AAU limit, it is my pleasure to present to you the wherewithal for you and Ethlyn to go wherever you desire. And as I give you this, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Ducky Drake, the champion himself.
First, I'd like to thank J.D., Coach Wooden, the others for the presentations tonight. You know, all presentations are nice, but the one gift that will always mean the most to me is your presence here this evening. Other things may pass away, but this memory will linger forever in my life. You know, I've always thought that testimonials were for someone else. And so I'm not sure that I don't feel that way tonight. When Bob Fisher and Herb heard that I was going to not be coaching track anymore, they said, well, we'll have a dinner for you. Where do you want to have it? And I said, let's have it at the university if you insist on having it. So Bob said, well, we'll start in the Westwood room. And I said, Bob, you'll never fill it. To those of you who don't know the university, the Westwood room is a room downstairs that holds about 100 people. And so I'm really overwhelmed that there are so many here tonight. I don't think I have ever talked to so many people at one time in my life. Mr. Ackerman said he wanted this to be a night of fun and for everyone to hedge hop a little and just have fun, and I agreed with him. I think it should be an evening for fun, but it's kind of hard to have fun sometimes when your knees are knocking together. I think you've noticed perhaps that this is a family affair because here on the stage I am surrounded by my family. This has always been a family that liked to get together, and so I'm really honored that it should be here, and I am privileged tonight to make the introductions, and you know, I've been briefed real well on how these things should be run, and that isn't any sign that I'm going to do it that way, but they did brief me. There are a few people that I would like to mention that are not here on the stage first, and I know that when you begin to mention people, you get into trouble, but I'm going to mention just a few. I don't want them to stand. I'm merely going to introduce them by name. I'd like to introduce Ma Crandall. We're the two oldest UCLA people. I'd like to introduce the Dickies because their family, they live next door to us, and in all the weekends and the days that I'm away from home, they look after Ethlyn. There's another couple that I want to mention, because if it hadn't been for this young man, I would never have been able to have been both track coach and trainer. We've been together so much that he, too, is part of my family. That's Larry Carter and his wife, Margie. Then seated in the audience is my nephew, Bob Drake, another nephew, Fred Granfield, and my cousin, Bernice Hendricks. And now we come to the people that are seated here on the stage. I'm not going to start at one end and just go down the line like is done sometimes, because I don't happen to have them that way on my sheet. You see, these people to me are Red, Sis, and Bud, and Babe, and so forth. And if I don't have them written down here, I won't get the situation done properly. Seated at either end of the table are two of my nephews, John and David Connor. Now you boys can stand because you're up here, you see. Now, you know, it'd be a real good idea if you just save all the applause, and we're going to give everybody a big hand at the end, because otherwise it takes too long. Next, I'd like to introduce my brother-in-law, and I think that really he seems closer to me as a son than a brother-in-law, because he was born about the time we were married. He had his mother and three older sisters who sort of gave him most of the things he wanted, and I sort of pushed him around. I've never been sure whether he's quite forgiven me or not. I'd like to introduce Ed Curtis and his wife, Helen. Next, Ethelyn's sister, Helen, John Wesley, Mr. and Mrs. John Wesley Connor. Next, Ethelyn's sister, Ruby, Mr. and Mrs. Lauren Granfield. You know, I think these two gals are as close to me and love me as much as if I were their own brother. Then sometimes people talk about having mother-in-law trouble, but I've never had any trouble like that. I'd like to introduce my mother-in-law, Mrs. Vesta Curtis. Now, if you've taken a look at these families, there are certain characteristics. You probably have figured out the ones that belong to me. My brother, who's the principal of Santa Monica High School, Dr. George Drake, and his wife, Frances. My other brother, Linus Drake, who works in the personnel department at Douglas Aircraft, and his wife, Carolyn. Now, the next person that, I'm sorry that I cannot introduce my mother also, but she's up and around some, but it wasn't possible for her to come and attend a meeting as long as this. But my dad and mother taught me many things. When I was young, they taught me to work hard, to be faithful, to be true, always to look for the good in everyone, to be able to accept criticism. In fact, they taught me all the good things that I might know, and the bad things are things I discovered for myself. At this time, it's my privilege to introduce to me one of the grandest persons I've ever known, my dad. We talk about a testimonial dinner. Really, you're giving the testimonial for the wrong person. It should be for my wife. She's the one who stays home nights alone while I'm gone on trips with athletic teams. She's the one who never has a weekend where we can go anywhere together from the 1st of September until the 1st of July. She never crabs about me being gone or the places I go. She accepts my working on Sunday, extra calls at most any time, sometimes the day or night, to do something. I'm extremely proud of this young lady. To me, she's the sweetest and most beautiful girl in the world, my wife, Ethelyn. While I'm mentioning people, I'd like to mention Mr. Ackerman for being Master of Ceremonies, because this evening would not have been complete without that, because Mr. Ackerman brought me to UCLA in the first place. Second, I'd like to say a few thank yous. And that should be very easy. I should just include all of you, because if I was to name all who have been a help and an inspiration to me, I would call the name of each person here. But I cannot do that. My first thanks to the committee who made this evening possible. Now, I asked Bob Fisher for the list, and he was afraid I'd read all the names, so Bob said, I'll give it to you Thursday. But I know they must have twisted a lot of arms to get all you people here, because occasions such as this just don't happen. It takes a lot of hard work on someone's part. I must especially thank Tilly Parisi, Coach Wooden, J.D. Morgan, Ellsworth Meyer, C.K., and Rafer, and only wish that the things they said were true. You know, as I listened to them, I was reminded of a story I heard some time ago. I think Hale Sparks is probably where I first heard the story, and I think it was one of our Bruin meetings. You know, in Europe, the trains are different from the trains in this country. There's an aisle up the side of the train, and everyone sits in a compartment. There's a long seat in these compartments, and you sit facing each other. Down through southern France one day, as the train's going along, there's a beautiful blonde girl and a not-so-beautiful maiden lady on one side of the train. On the other side is an Army colonel and a private. And as they're going along, the conductor came through the train, and he said, Now, I came through to warn you because in just a few minutes we're going to go into a tunnel. We'll be in this tunnel for 3 or 4 minutes. It'll be completely dark, and I didn't want you to be frightened because there's no way we can turn the lights on in this compartment. The train swished into the tunnel. In the darkness, there's the sound of a kiss and a resounding slap. In just a minute or two, they're out into the bright sunlight again. There sits the maiden lady with a smile on her face because she thinks that the private had tried to kiss the blonde girl and she had slapped him. And the blonde girl, she sits there with a smile on her face and a sort of an egotistical look because she thinks that the private had actually tried to kiss her. In the darkness, he'd made a mistake and kissed the maiden lady and she had slapped him. And the colonel, he sat there with a red face. He's the commanding officer. He thought that the private had tried to kiss the blonde girl. She had tried to slap him. He had ducked and she had slapped the colonel. But the private, he knew that he had kissed his own hand and slapped the colonel. So you see, in all situations, there's some fact and some supposition. There are so many tonight that I owe so much. All my Masonic friends, I cannot believe that so many of you are here. It seems like all I've ever done to you is boss you around, insist on you doing things exactly right, and keep you just a little bit afraid of me. I can understand why the past masters are here because they wanted to see me in a spot for a change, and you're seeing it. My life has been deeply influenced by the teachings of Masonry, and I am constantly reminded of those important tenets: brotherly love, relief, and truth. Brotherly love not just to you, but to all with whom I come in contact. Relief whenever and wherever I am able to give it, and truth to all with whom I speak or act. My contacts with Masonry have given me a life away from the university that has always been a deep and guiding influence. My thanks to all of you who have run on my track teams. I wish I had time to call your names. I know that you have always given to UCLA to the best of your ability. To all the members of the various clubs, the Bruin Bench, the Sportsmen of the South, the old Duck Club, which is now the Spike Club, keep up the good work because UCLA track cannot survive without you. Now to mention a few names and groups. Some I shall forget and will unintentionally omit some. May I assure you that the omission will be of the mind and not of the heart. I hate long meetings, so I must move along. I would like to mention my 3 assistants over the years. Pat Turner, who was my assistant when I first became head track coach and who was here in the heydays when we had the 4 best broad jumpers in the world. Next was Craig Dixon, who was one of UCLA's greatest athletes, one of the few men who ever won 4 national titles in 1 year. I will always remember you beating Harrison Dillard in the hurdles at Fresno. I think you had 59 straight victories before being defeated in the hurdles. And Craig, you also gave me my saddest moment in track and field. The day in the Coliseum when you fell in the Olympic trials when you were 1.5 yards out in front. This was the year you should have been an Olympic champion. And then Don Vick, who was probably our greatest weight man. Don put the shot farther than any weight man in the world that was not a weightlifter. Then I'd like to also mention Wilbur Johns. Wilbur and I worked together for a long, long time. I remember Wilbur as trainer, player, and coach, and also as athletic director. You know, one time I took a track trip down to Arizona. I was the coach. and Wilbur Johns was the trainer. All those who have been so helpful in rushing athletes, especially Herb Smith and Tom Ham. The others, I just can't name you all. Tom, there is no way to repay you for your loyalty to track at UCLA. Your family have waited in the car many times while you talked to some boy. Pat Ham has seen more high school track meets than any woman in the United States. The NCAA championship should really belong to Tom. He worked hard to get Don Vick, Bob Seaman, Rayford Johnson, and all the others in school. The groups that I might just briefly mention and thank in passing: the Sportsman's Quartet, I enjoyed the music very much. The fraternity group that is here, the alumni group, the newspaper men, all of the university groups, the program committee, the ticket committee, the Southern California Committee for the Olympic Games, the AU, the track riders, the Helms Board, and the Athletic Foundation. As I leave coaching track and just stay in the training room, I know that there is much more prestige in being a coach than being a trainer, but I honestly felt that I could be of more service to athletics, to the athletic program at UCLA by staying in the training room. I can at least make an attempt to help many more boys. My best friend and counselor, perhaps, Mr. Wooden, when I asked him what he thought I should do, said, "Ducky, what more can you hope to accomplish? You've coached Olympic teams, you've been an Olympic trainer, you've had a PCC conference championship, you've had an NCAA championship. You never beaten USC in a dual meet, but it will take a lot of building to do that." He didn't mention this fact because I don't think he knew, but ever since I've been coaching at UCLA, UCLA has been represented on the Olympic team. Not all coaches can boast of this. When I was first beginning in an assistant coach, there was George Jefferson, Jimmy LaValle. Well, George Jefferson in 1932. Jimmy LaValle, 400 meters relay, and Bob Young in the relay in 1936. In 1948, George Stanich, Craig Dixon, George in the high jump and Dixon in the hurdles. 1952, Cy Young in the javelin, George Brown in the broad jump. In 1956, Rayford Johnson in the decathlon, Ithard Veerasingham representing Ceylon in the high jump. In 1960, Rayford Johnson in the decathlon, C.K. Young in the decathlon, George Rabanis representing Greece in the pole vault, and in 1964 we expect to have C.K. Young in the decathlon in Tokyo. Before I go on, there's just another group that I would like to take the time to mention for just a moment. As long as I've been talking about people, that's an invisible group that's here tonight. I'm not going to read all the names, but just a few that have meant so much to me. My coach, Harry Trotter. Fred Cousins, who was head of the physical education department when I came here. Martin Trebe, supervisor of physical education in the Los Angeles City Schools when I taught in the junior high school and came here after school. I mention his name because Martin Trebe once said to me, "Ducky, on your way up the ladder to success, be careful you don't slip off one of the rounds." A.J. Sturzenegger, a great coach in his own right. Bill Wrights, javelin thrower. Ronnie Drummond, a discus thrower, one of the greatest for his size, winning an AAU and an NCAA championship in the same year. Alex Gill, a high jumper. Jack Schilling, one of the four great broad jumpers that were here at the same time. Last summer, when C.K. and I were traveling in Europe, I had a very fine compliment paid to me by a young lady, and I don't even remember her name. we were traveling in Germany, and I believe it was in Cologne, and I sat and talked with her in the lobby of the hotel one night, and she asked me, "How long do you expect to keep coaching track?" And I explained my situation to her and told her that I might not be coaching too much longer, and she said, "'Twill be a pity." And I said, "What do you mean it will be a pity?" She said, "In our country you have a very fine reputation, and if you should quit coaching track, 'twill be a pity." You know, I would have probably done better financially if I had stayed in the Los Angeles City school system and tried to become an administrator. But I have never regretted, because I wouldn't have had all of you people here for friends. And what's more, I wouldn't have had my many friends throughout the whole world, in Sweden, Germany, England, Switzerland, and especially my many friends in China. I am often asked, what was your greatest thrill? All of my many thrills that you men have given me were at that time the greatest. Football, the national championship and others, tennis in your many championships, basketball in all of your championships, and especially this year in the national championship. But I'm particularly going to talk about track tonight. I remember Ray Smith when he won, I believe, the first Pacific Coast Conference championship in the 2-mile. We had taught Ray to sprint the whole last 660, not just the quarter as everyone was doing in those days. When he took off at the 660, he ran away and left everyone. Hugh Mitchell, when he unexpectedly set a new Pacific Coast Conference record in the 880. Many thrills by Craig Dixon in the hurdles. And Jimmy LaValle at the National AAU in Berkeley. Jimmy had been back east and lost the NCAA 440 race, and he came back and told me how he'd lost the race, and I said, "Jim, I think we'd better change your race." Here's a boy that had about 2 more races to run in his whole college career, and he said, "Coach, if you think it should be changed, we'll change it." We put a different finish on Jimmy's race. It was a real thrill to me when Bill Henry, broadcasting the race from Berkeley, said, "I'm not surprised at Jimmy LaValle winning the 400 meters, but I am surprised at the way he won it." I've been thrilled by our relay team at the Drake Relays, bringing our first national recognition to UCLA. They're all here tonight. Bob Young, Jim Miller, Ray Vehar, Sinclair Lott, and Jimmy LaValle. And their coach is here, Mr. William C. Ackerman. You know, in those days, Trotter and I were both teaching in a junior high school, and we couldn't get away to go, so we sent Mr. Ackerman back to the Drake Relays with him. This is the only group of people in the world that have been twice to the Drake Relays and never seen a single event. Bill took them back there. He took bottled water. They drank that. He wouldn't let them read a newspaper. He said, "I'll give you the clippings when we're going home on the train." He fed them, locked them up in the room, got them fighting mad, you know, caged them up. Then he went out to the track himself, came back down and unlocked the door and let them out long enough to run. And they won 2 championships. Mr. William Ackerman is the only undefeated track coach in the world. I was thrilled at Fresno when Mr. Ackerman broke the unofficial world's record in the 100-yard dash. He and I were standing in the stands about 100 yards from the finish. And when Jimmy LaValle came off the turn and passed McCarthy of USC and went on to win, at the finish I turned to say something to Mr. Ackerman, and he was gone. He's down at the finish catching LaValle. Other great thrills, and some people think these should be my greatest thrills: winning the Pacific Coast Conference Championship and the NCAA Championship. Then C.K. and Rafer at Oregon when they both broke the world's record in the decathlon on the same day. But speaking of thrills, I still can't count out the tremendous effort of that 2-mile relay team in the Coliseum just the other night. Then the Olympic Games at Rome. I have said that this was my most thrilling experience. Now, C.K. and Rafer gave you some of the decathlon Rome. I'd like to take the time, with your permission, to give you my impression of the decathlon in Rome. We'd worked together all summer long, Rafer, C.K., and myself. We had talked many times about what might happen in Rome. I had told him that if one boy made one mistake and the other made no mistakes, the one without a mistake would be a winner. Maybe some of you newspaper men will remember when I brought Rafer down to the newspaper writers' luncheon one day, and you asked Rafer who would be his greatest competition in Rome, and he said C.K. Young, and you laughed at him. But we knew how tough C.K. was going to be. And I also had told them, you may have me in a bad spot. I'm coaching both of you. We have two countries involved. And if it gets tight in Rome, I'm going to pull back into the stands and you're on your own. That we went to Rome with only one idea in mind, and that was to get first and second in the Olympic Games. Rafer left about a week before we did, and when we arrived in Rome, I lived with C.K., and the Chinese people didn't take any chances on him breaking training. I was his roommate. Rafer used to come up to our quarters, and we used to go out to the practice field assigned to the Oriental peoples and practice together every day. Finally, the opening day of the decathlon arrived, and Rafer came over to our quarters and went with us in our Jeep out to the field, to the stadium. I have two pictures in my desk, which are the most outstanding competitive pictures I have ever seen. They were sent to me by the Sports Illustrated magazine. In the first one, C.K. is standing in front of Rafer with his hands about so far apart, and Rafer says C.K. is telling him, you must move your step one way or the other in order to get on the board. They're still getting first and second and working together in the Olympic Games. The other picture is later, I believe the second day in the pole vault. The two are passing each other. Their hands are hidden between them. But you can almost see that they're holding hands, but their heads are turned as if one is saying to the other on an accomplishment of clearing a height, nice going, but that's it. The first day of the Olympic Games, C.K. made his mistake when he fouled his best put in the shot. So at the end of the first day, the two boys are well out in front, Rafer with a fairly good-sized lead. Unless something dreadful happens to one of the boys, we're assured of first and second in the Olympic Games. Well, the first day had started at 9:30 in the morning. We're running the 400 meters at 11:30 that night. When we get back to the village, all the eating places are closed except one, and that's a sort of a snack bar, and they eat cold food, get to bed by perhaps about 1 o'clock. Then I get them up at 6 in the morning so they can start competing again at 9 the next morning. On the way back to the village, I said to Rafer, are you going up with us in the morning? It was then that I realized that these two great friends were real enemies. Perhaps I shouldn't put it that way, real competitors until the end of this decathlon, because Rafer said, no, I believe I'll just ride up with the boys in the morning. You know, I'd like to digress for just a moment to tell you two stories between the 2 days of these Olympics. I believe Jack Tobin's here tonight. Jack sat right beside me for 2 days and 2 nights in the Olympic Games. Every time I drew a long breath, said a word, changed a facial expression, out comes Jack's little black notebook, and he wrote it down. The morning after the decathlon, he came in my room and he said, Ducky, I'm sure glad I was with you all that time and kept all those notes because New York's just wired for a story and I have it. I said, Jack, you better be careful what you say. And he said, you'll never need to worry about me, and I knew that beforehand. Jack paid me a real compliment when we were back and over in Glendale. We were both on the same program, and when Jack got up to speak, he said, for 2 days and 2 nights I sat beside Ducky in Rome, and I still don't know which boy he was for. I heard Fred Hessler's program the other night, and I believe it was Rafer that said lots of people tried to find out which one I was for, but no one had been able to find out, and you know what? When it finished, my wife turned to me and said, "Well, which one were you for?" You know, they were both my boys. They were UCLA boys. That should be your answer. There was a Russian man, Jack, you'll remember him. He sat in the stands in front of us. He turned to me and said, "Is Ducky Drake Rayford Johnson's coach?" And I said, "Yes, he is." We sat there for some time, and something happened on the field that I didn't like too well, and I yelled across the field at one of the boys, and this man turned to me and said, "Are you Ducky Drake?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He got out his camera, and he brought all these Russian people up, and they'd sit down beside me like this and have their picture taken, and here'd come another one, some of their boys and some of their girls. We learned that he was the editor of a sports magazine in Russia. During the afternoon, I had caught a little cold, and I sneezed, and he came through with some word like arkazuntai, only a Russian word, and he immediately said to me, "That's what we say in Russia. What do you say in America?" And I said, "In America we say, 'God bless you.'" He said, "Not in Russia. Not in Russia." Well, the second day of the decathlon, the very first event, Rayford ran the lousiest flight of high hurdles he had run since he was in high school. You can picture his disappointment when the week before in Switzerland he had run 13.9, which was his greatest high hurdle race. Now Rayford's made his mistake. He came down near the end of the stands, and there was a moat around the stands in Rome. They should have one in South America, too. And there was a sort of a catwalk across this moat, and Rayford walked across this catwalk and down near one of the tunnels at the end of the stands. Jack Tobin said, "Ducky, Rayford's looking for you." So I got up and I started to walk down there. And I was thinking about what was best in this situation, and I figured to myself he might need a little shock. So when I got about 30 yards from Rayford, there wasn't any more people down in that end of the stand. I yelled at him. I had never spoken a harsh word to Rayford Johnson before in his life, but I yelled, "Rayford, get out on that field and fight. No champion ever got his head down because he had one bad break." No sympathy, which I knew he was expecting, and I turned and left him standing there. And I can tell you now, Rayford, my heart was breaking too. He went back out on the field and vaulted higher than he'd ever vaulted in his life, and as you know the story, eventually won the decathlon. So close was this decathlon that had CK not fouled his best shot put, had he cleared one more height in the pole vault, one more height in the high jump, or been able to run the 1,500 meters 9 seconds faster than Rayford, he would have been the eventual winner. The boys have told you the story of the 1,500 meters. Two boys in the middle of a race, men out in front, men behind, and all the people in the stands standing, cheering for these two boys, all except me. At the end, I turned and said to Jack Tobin, "Jack, this is the most exciting athletic contest I have ever seen in my life." It was to me, when I knew all the sacrifices that Rayford had made in order to win the gold medal for his country. He had been unhappy in Melbourne, felt that he had let down his family, his friends, and his country because he wasn't the winner there. He had given up thousands of dollars in commercial enterprises and much more in speaking engagements. I was rooming with CK. I knew what the Chinese people were saying. You must win for China. All China is counting on you. Here is a country that in all their history had never scored a single point in the Olympic Games. Actually, this decathlon was so exciting that I have been told that the Italian people around the press box were chanting at the close, "Give both of them a gold medal. Give both of them a gold medal." But then to bring us from Rome back to the present, I'm still thrilled with the 2-mile at the Coliseum relays. Great thrills. You have all given me great thrills. I love to coach track. I give it up with some sadness on my part. I've been coaching for a long time, and it just won't seem right not to be doing it anymore. but I am doing what I feel is best for athletics at UCLA. I would like to have closed my coaching career on a championship note, but it didn't turn out that way. I would like to say this about Coach Bush, that there is no one that I would rather leave this fine group of young men with than Jim Bush. And Jim, after this year, there's no way for you to go but up. I want you to know that I will never interfere with your coaching in any way, but I want you to feel that I always stand ready to help you in any way that I can, should you ask. To this year's team and to some of you others, you have heard me say many times, if you can't get first, get second. If you can't get second, get third. And if you can't get third, do better than you've ever done in your life, and you're still a winner with me. Fear is your greatest enemy. Desire your greatest asset. There's no room in athletics for a coward. To all of you athletes and your ladies, I think you know I believe in attempting to teach by example. Because I believe in this teaching, I must admit that over the years you have kept me out of a lot more trouble than I have ever kept most of you. Perhaps my philosophy of coaching can best be stated in a quotation from Amos Alonzo Stagg, the grand old man of coaching who coached for 25 years after most men retire, and I quote, "I have made the young men of America my ministry. I have tried to bring out the best in the boys I have coached. I am sure that many of them have been better Christians and citizens because of what they have learned on the athletic field. To get the most out of boys, you must love them. Good coaches must be concerned in every way with helping the boy. I have worked with boys whom I did not admire, but I have loved them just the same. Love has dominated my coaching career," unquote. I am sure that I could write no words that would come so near my thinking as this quotation. When I began to teach and coach a long time ago, I decided there were certain things that I should not do, and I would try never to get myself into a position where I could say, where my boys might say, why do you tell us not to do these things when you are doing them yourself? I am not perfect, far from it. But I shall endeavor during my remaining years at UCLA to set a good example, to serve UCLA, my university, with dignity and honor. I am deeply touched by this affair tonight, and once again, your greatest gift to me is your presence here, and thanks to all of you for making this wonderful evening possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ducky. That was great. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been a tremendous and wonderful audience, and we appreciate very much your coming here tonight. And may I say sweet dreams and good night to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much for being a master.
And I suggest that you come up and shake hands with Ducky.